people will have questions about that. We might just do your questions first. So you're the first to present. So we'll do questions after your presentation, and then for all the other presentations, we'll keep until the end. So not that I have questions, I might have, but yes, our comments. It's not with a question mark. So. I'm gonna some timer. Tout le monde, bienvenue à la session de validation. Sorry, no, we're not going to do this in French, we're going to do it in English, just to wake you up in the morning. So everybody, welcome. This is a session about validation. I think validation seems a bit boring to a lot of people, but to be honest, it has been the hottest topic of Inspire implementation for a while. And just why? Because people want to be compliant with legislation. Inspire is European legislation, and they want to know at a certain point. We have been making a lot of efforts to implement an infrastructure for Inspire. Are we compliant? Actually, are we providing the Commission with what the Commission expects us to provide? And do we have a tool that can tell us whether the things we are doing are the right things? So that's one part of the discussion. Another thing is, like, if you want to be interoperable, you have to achieve some level of conformity. Now, there's a big difference between like legal compliance and technical conformity, but it's more or less, it should be tested by the same tool. So we've got some very nice presentations, some sharing of experiences. Well, first we've got Clemens, who will be he was showing us how they've been using the validation tools in the ELF project. I'm going to very briefly, Clemens, I'm going through all the presentations and then I'll let you speak. So then that's going to be very interesting because Clemens has also been working on one of the actions of the MIWP for the MIC, building a validation tool. Maybe he'll briefly discuss that one as well, I don't know. Then we've got Adeline, who will actually present us how in France they use Spatineo monitoring and performance tools to actually monitor the performance and the conformity of regional SDIs. We've got a case from Spain where Antonio will enlighten us a little bit in how the quality of service is tested. There you are, Antonio, is tested in Spain and which tools you're using. And then Ine is coming up and she's going to tell us about the dashboard, our new dashboard, and how it actually already provides, well, a future outlook on possible future reporting under Inspire and how you could use your metadata with automatic harvesting to provide the indicators we need at European level for reporting. And then finally, Dominique Laurent, who's not here yet, that's what Adeline told me, she will be joining us later on. And Clemens will be leaving, so we will be taking questions of Clemens' presentation first, but he will be coming back for questions afterwards if necessary. So Dominique will talk about a validation workshop in Paris just before summer with Eurogeographics, EuroSDR, and GRC. Very important meeting, and she will brief us on the results and the outcome of that meeting. So, very interesting session, and without any further ado, I will give the floor to Clemens, please.
Okay, thank you, Yuri. As Yuri has mentioned, what I will be talking now is about the European Location Framework experience with validating. And I'll explain a little bit about the approach and the experiences that we have done there. It's a presentation of me and my colleague Jan Herman, who presented also several times about validation in other fora this week from the perspective of the Inspire validator. And also Roy Mellem from Kartverket, the Norwegian mapping agency, who in the project European Location Framework is leading the work package that is responsible for actually making all the national services and data sets available in the SDI. So probably you've heard about ELF before, but that's just one quick slide for those who haven't. It's basically an activity of the European mapping and cadastral authorities to support basically the European arena, the European data users. So most of the partners are actually NMCAs, so the mapping and cadastral authorities, plus then also tool providers, application developers, and for example us. and it's coming to a close at the end of next month. So a short overview or motivation why validation is really essential, right? It's here the point for me, the point of validation is to give those who publish stuff a tool that helps them to check what they are doing, if that's correct. It's less about, let me check if I'm meeting a compliance requirement or something like that. It's in this case, it's really a necessity because the organizations have stood up quite more than 100 services. I think right now the slide is a bit older, so I think it's more than 13 service providers, and I think it's closer to 130 services that exist. And of course, there are central components that actually access these services and need to make use of them, and also users, of course, need to make use of it. So it's really to make it work as an infrastructure. It's really important to have mechanisms and procedures. It's not just the tools; it's also the processes to actually make it work and to test that. That covers both view services. There's WMS and WMTS, and also download services, WFS download services with GML data. That with both Inspire 3 and Inspire 4, and the ELF extensions, which are small extensions to the Inspire 4.0 schemas. So it's quite a range of things that need to be tested and validated in order to make it work. And it also needs to be tested on several levels. So you have the national data tier. So when the data is prepared, it's harmonized, edge-matched, etc. So the data owner, as part of the data preparation process, what they need to do is really to test the data itself. Then the national service provider, which may or may not be the same organization, they actually then have to test the services. And then in the central platform tier, which is a cloud-based infrastructure, which has several components that integrate, provide applications and integrate several of these services, that needs to be tested also from an infrastructure level. Also there is security there, and that of course also has an impact. So all that needs to be tested on all levels. And there, if we look at it, there is actually testing occurring on quite a number of using quite a number of tools and also covering quite a number of aspects. I will be mostly talking about the service aspect here. The data quality is on the lower end, and that's mostly using the standard GIS tools that is also used to often used to prepare the data. And there are several tools that have been used by different mapping agencies in the project. Then we also have let's say, going back to the top, we have, since the OGC services are used to provide the data, it's also, of course, the OGC conformance testing is relevant. And there are tools from OGC, so one of the things is to use these tests as a basic test for the services. There's also, of course, since the idea is to integrate into Inspire, obviously, the GeoPortal metadata validator is also a key tool that each service has to pass. And finally, there are Inspire requirements and additionally also some ELF requirements that we also need to test. We are using the ETF tool that will also be used in the, or is used in the Inspire validator. And basically also what we build on is the work that's been done here. For not to repeat the WFS test that the OGC side test, but to test the additional things that are in the technical guidance of the view and the download services and also encodings. And then from an infrastructure point of view, there is also the Finnish mapping agency is using the Spatineo tools, which I think you mentioned the presentation that will be about this also in one of the member states, but here it's used to actually monitor the availability and also the performance of the infrastructure, which is a key thing. If you consider that there are 100 plus services that need to be monitored, you need tools for that to actually make that happen. So in a question, where are we with that? The finding of that is that really more work is needed to make that usable in a broad sense. So often the reporting that you get out of the tools, the OGC site tests, it's very hard to read, very hard to use the tools. And so more work is really needed to bring it to a level where it's easy for users, data providers, service providers to really use the tools. It's easier for the view service validation, for the WFS, for the data tests, which are way of more capabilities in what the service really does with queries, etc., with data. More things can go wrong with the XML than with a PNG. So it's harder to do the testing, and it's really still hard to use the tests, and that also includes the work that we did in ETF, and most of the work is really there about, and we'll continue that in the Inspire context. Most of the work is really there on how can we improve the way the things are reported that is understandable. So it's on a usable level. But it's not good enough from the long term. So what we see in the project, there's work that needs to be done in ELF and in these other fora. But really the point also that Roy made, that's basically a slide from Roy Mellum, it's really essential, because if the validation doesn't really work, and the services don't really aren't interoperable, the whole infrastructure doesn't work. And I mean, we've seen struggles with that, and it's not so easy to get everything right. So it's a work in progress also, and I think it will continue to be a work in progress to do that. I'll briefly talk about, because that's basically work that we did in the project. Is using the ETF tool, and I'll briefly talk about the experiences that we have. So the ETF is basically a test framework for services, data sets, and metadata. And in the ELF, we focus really, in the ELF context, we really focus on the service test. So we're using SOAP UI, that's a test tool that we're using there as the basis, but we have extended that with additional capabilities. And so in order to have better reporting, more readable reports, also uniform reporting, whether we use SOAP UI, an XML database like BaseX, or any other test engine that you may want to use to run tests, for example, the team engine. That's really work that we do in extending these basic test engines to have a unified access to that. What we do is, in the project, what we do is we have a central web application that is provided and that is used by the mapping agencies to actually run the tests, we're there basically to help if there are questions or issues, because, as I mentioned, it's not always clear when there are issues what the cause is, so we try to help there. But some organizations have run that tests also locally in their infrastructure. I think we've presented that already in the Inspire Validator context. There is a Docker image which makes it relatively easy if you can run Docker to actually deploy that and run the tests. And also if you want to use the tests that we have been using, they were developed and are maintained by Geonovum in the Netherlands, and they are also used in the Dutch SDI to actually test the services there, that's also what we plan to build upon in the Inspire context. Of course, they don't really reflect the now agreed abstract test suites. So work is needed to bring that in line with the agreed test cases that need to be done. There's minimal extensions, so basically from a service point of view, ELF doesn't go beyond Inspire. There are a few agreements like we don't use Atom there, but every NMCA provides a WFS download service with direct access support. There's one thing that we found that we had to add, and that is if we have links between features, we saw that there are different ways that is encoded, and that's of course difficult for users then to use. So we agreed on how to actually do that, and so we added also tests that test exactly that you have resolvable links and that they are encoded in a consistent way. So that's just the web application. I think I'll skip that and the reports. And to summarize, basically the experience with SOAP UI, it's open source, and the nice thing about it is that you have a graphical user interface to actually develop the tests, and you can use it rapidly to develop these kind of tests, and you can execute them locally. But there are some issues with how it works internally, and that's the cause for some of the reasons why sometimes the reports are hard to read or understand, and that's something that, as I mentioned, we will be working on to actually improve that, continue to improve that. Finally, a summary to explain also for those in particular who have seen some of the demos or the presentation on Wednesday about ETF and the Inspire validator, to clarify what we do also in addition in the test framework, not in terms of the tests itself, but the test framework. So there are several things like we extended the API. It will be much richer in the version that will be used in the Inspire validator. The domain model about requirements, test suites, test cases, etc., is richer to reflect what's the actual use in the Inspire context. Support for multilingual reports is there. That wasn't there before, but in the future, if there are translations, then messages can also be in any of the any other language than English. You can run arbitrary collections of tests, etc. Dependencies, we see that already. If you have run one test and it depends on other tests, they are started automatically. And we plan to integrate the OGC team engine as another test engine so that we can reuse some of the tests for the OGC standard compliance in that context. Okay, with that I finish. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Clemens. Very interesting presentation. I think we'll take questions for Clemens because he has to go somewhere else for a while, but then he'll come back. But we'll take some questions now. So if you've got questions for Clemens on the validator and the work on the validators, please go ahead. No questions? No? Okay. I do have questions, Clemens, but I'll keep them till the end for you, because he will be coming back. So then I'll invite Adeline to the stage. Please, Adeline. And she will explain us the use of Spatineo for the regional SDIs in France. Thank you.
So hello everyone, I'm Adeline Coupé from the French Mapping Agency. I will present you one of our mission, which is measuring Inspire compliance of regional SDI. First, I will present you a brief summary of the implementation of Inspire in France, the French national infrastructure, the role of the National Institute of Geographic and Forestry Information, which is the French Mapping Agency, and the role of the French regions in Inspire. And then I will present you our mission of measuring Inspire compliance of regional SDI. So, Inspire in France, you have two main access to Inspire. One is the GeoCatalog, which is the catalog of metadata. Every metadata in France go to this catalog, so it's our discovery service. And you have the French GeoPortal, the GeoPortail, which is our view service. You can find here our data from the French mapping agency and also other producer data. And the regional SDI provide to the GeoCatalog their metadata. And if they want to, they can use the GeoPortal API to show their data. They often provide discovery, view, and download services. And the local authorities, such as municipalities or departments, published their data and metadata to regional SDI. So what is the role of the French mapping agency in Inspire? We participate in a European project such as ELF. Some of our experts also help writing data specification. We also support in France from the Ministry of Ecology. We made some training session to inspire metadata in French regions. We also made some training sessions to help people do the mapping between their own data and the national data model. And one of our missions is also to measure service compliance for regional spatial data infrastructure in a region. And we help with reporting to the European Commission. So, as I said before, we are also responsible for the implementation of the French National Geographical website, the GeoPortal. We are also concerned as a reference data producer. The French regions, they are a key actor in French Inspire infrastructure. They collect data and metadata from territorial authorities and then send metadata to the National Discovery Service, GeoCatalog. In many regions, SDI have developed with view, download, and discovery services, and they also are a local help for actors like municipalities in the implementation of the Inspire directive. So here you can see a map come from 2014. In fact, many regions have a local SDI. Most of the French regions have at least one. Some of them have two SDI, one more dedicated to the state's data, and the other one to the local infrastructure. Well, when we begin our mission of helping the French region see if their services are compliant with the Inspire directive, we were a bit disappointing because, well, nobody asked us for help for this analysis. So we wonder why. Two main reasons. The first one is that they are a bit suspicious. They don't want us to spy their service. And so we have to reassure them that we don't want to punish them if they're not Inspire compliant. We just want to help them to see if they are or not compliant with the Inspire directive. Well, in 2016, we switched from 22 to 13 regions without counting the department, the regions overseas. So some easy wait to see what happened. So it's the beginning of our mission, so I don't have a lot of results to show you, but well, I will present some of them. So the mission, so in support of the Ministry of Environment, the French agency offers analysis on web services for the regional spatial SDI. It's free for them. On what kind of services? We analyze WFS, WMS, and WMTS. And for that, we use Spatineo, and for the metadata, we use the Inspire metadata validator. So what is tested? With Spatineo, we test if the services are compliant with the OGC standards and the presence of mandatory operations, so for get map capabilities. And it can tell you if you're compliant or not, and if you're not, it says to you, well, you're not, and why you're not compliant. We also verify the results of the requests. So Spatineo makes a lot of requests, and you can see the results. Here you see results of the get smart request. So you can see if you have a results and the results. With the Spatineo monitor, we test also the performance of the services and the availability and capacity. So here's a print screen. You see a lot of red color. It's not really good results. And with the Inspire validator metadata, we check if the service metadata are compliant. So here it's in English. We have to translate to our region in French. So just short conclusion. Well, it's just the beginning of our mission, so we don't have a lot of results to show you. Only 5 regions are in the process of being analyzed. The first observation is that often the metadata, service metadata, are absent. We can't find them in our geocatalog. Or don't respect Inspire requirements. So there's still work to do on metadata. And performance and capacity on big data layers such as auto imagery don't reach Inspire requirements. Well, it's not totally true because the measurements are made at the not directly at the output of the service, but it helps us understand the user point of view. And the user point of view, it's still difficult to access the big data layers. So I'm done. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you very much, Adeline. I think we should keep our questions till the end. So if you've got questions, write them down, and we'll come back to Adeline at the end, where we invite all speakers together on stage, and everybody can ask, well, probably cross-cutting questions based on everything you presented. Thank you very much. So I would like to ask Antonio to the stage now to discuss, well, the approaches on the quality of service measurements in Spain.
the pointer. Okay, thank you. It doesn't work. Where is the mouse, the pointer? I can slide it.
Extended. It's here.
Yeah, that was Adeline's.
Which one is?
Okay. Yes.
Which one is? This one?
I can find my presentation.
No? It was here?
I'm sorry.
It was here?
Yes, I have copied the speaker's corner. I can see.
It's not any of this? Do you want we change
This one?
this?
This one? Yes, spy on the
Well, in the meantime, if somebody has a question on the previous presentations, you can ask. Well,
Yes, it's
we can already start discussing that one. So if somebody has a question on the presentation of Adeline,
okay.
that would be nice.
Well,
Can we go?
thank you very
Oh,
much.
sorry.
Okay, thank you. Good morning, everybody. Okay, we're going to speak a little bit about some practical experience trying to determine the quality service of the resources the IGN Spain is publishing now on the web. Okay. First of all, we're trying to summarize the INSPIRE requirements on service, on quality of service, to show how complex and diverse is the information now. It's not easy to grasp the key information in a short time. Then we're trying to give some figures about performance, availability, and capacity. And in the end, we will try to finalize with some conclusion. Well, first of all, we have some requirements defined in European regulation, which are mandatory about performance, availability, and capacity. And then in the technical guidelines, we have some, let's say, advice or recommendation on how to fulfill these legal requirements. The problem is that the methodology of measuring the quality is in the technical guidelines, which actually has not legal force. So, details as how many requests for how many time, how often quality of service shall be evaluated, and so on, are in the guidelines. Anyway, we apply a principle of goodwill, and we will apply all the stuff without looking which part is mandatory or which kind is perhaps only a recommendation, and so on. So, this is a summary of the performance requirements for WMS less than 5 seconds, under normal condition, no peaks, and so on. For catalog is less than 3 seconds, and for web feature service less than 30 seconds. In any case, the regulation speaks about the initial response time, the time necessary to wait for the first bit of the response. Regarding this availability and capacity, 99% annual is required, without maintenance time that is recommended to be less than 120 hours per year. Regarding capacity, the requirements are quite hard. The test must include for our visualization services 20 requests per second during 1 minute, with a specific structure of the petitions. But this part is only recommended. And for catalog services, 30 requests per second, also with a specific structure recommended. Anyway, we have begun to perform tests on our own services. On WMS, we use 20 requests per hour, the double request frequency that is specified in the regulation during an entire year, and the maintenance time is less than 10 hours. In fact, I mean, our services are most of the time running. We use a get map of 470 kilobytes, only using one layer, but we use the same bounding box in all the petition against the recommendation. We have tested our 9 WMS expired compliant, and we get weak average between 0.15 and 1.99 seconds, which is quite okay. Only for 5 weeks during this year, we get an average time response bigger than 2 seconds, and only one service during 1 week, we get an average of 5.75 seconds, which could be, I suppose, easily excluded from the better 90% response, which is allowed by the regulation. So we're quite happy about the performance. We have considered not initial time response, but total response time. I mean, if we get good figures with total response times, we suppose that the initial time response will be better, of course. But the bounding box we're using is not variable. It's the same all the time. This is true. Okay. You can see the figures, the average response time. And additionally, we have 11 WMS not expired compliant, with also get average response time less than 5 seconds. Well, let's move to availability. We use the same package of requests, 20 requests per hour during an entire year, very few maintenance time, the same get map. We have checked 20 WMS. Usually, we get a weak availability between 99 and 100%. We doesn't discharge peaks or maintenance stops. You can see the figures. Almost all the services are has a better availability than 99%, but one of our main important WMS, which is the WMS publishing our basic maps, has an availability less than 99%. This is because we have a problem in the months of February, March. We make a change in our database, and this change spoils the service during some weeks. The problem is that if you commit a sin, this sin spoils your curricula during one entire year. During one entire year. We got 5 weeks with bad availability, and after that the problem was solved, and well, we have 13 weeks with availability of 100%, but this is a problem that a specific error can spoil the availability during a figure during one entire year. We need to improve the time we spent when we began to publish a new version of UMS, and there is a error and things runs wrong, to come back to the previous version. We spent too much time to recover the situation in order to solve the problem. Well, and now let's speak about capacity. We have checked 5 WMS expired and 1 WMS not expired compliant several times, and well, things run not perfectly, I must confess. We perform 20 requests during one entire minute, in 1,200 requests, and we think it's a extremely very stressing and difficult test to pass. It is allowed to perform it during maintenance stop, but now we think we're not in the position of stop a service to put in the internet to check maintenance capacity and so on. We have checked our services, giving service in internet, and also having all the impact of the usual petition. You can see there that in this test, the average time response was okay, but you can see a time response of 9 seconds, 11 seconds, 20 seconds, and even 41 seconds. But on the right column, you can see that only 10 answer or 5, or indeed 1 answer can spoil the result of the test. Okay, so the average time was okay, but the maximum response time was not enough good in some occasion. Well, honestly, we think this test is too stressing, too difficult to pass. Well, and what about WMTS services? Well, these kind of services are marvelous, pass the test very easily, has a very good performance, very good disponibility. Well, we think it is an excellent solution to improve the quality of service for visualization services. And also, this kind of services free resources to be devoted to other services and to improve the quality of WMS or WFS. Well, we have tested also web feature services, performance and availability, and we get good services, but we must confess that these services are not very used in practice. I mean, we have very few users exploiting these services. And also, we have detected that in this kind of service, it's quite easy to mix up standard compliance problems with quality problems, because we can receive a standard request, your service can give a bad answer, it spoils the quality of the service, but it's a problem of conformance. So with not very mature services, it's very easy to mix up both questions. Our conclusion is that we didn't know the problems in deep related to quality service until we have begun to evaluate quality of service. So we recommend eagerly to perform your own test quality for services. External evaluation doesn't exclude internal tests at all, and vice versa. I think it's a good idea to have an external service checking your performance, ability, and so on, and also that you perform your own test because you learn a lot and know the problems in deep. Also, within that performance, inspire requirements about performance and availability are feasible. It's quite it's more or less easy to pass the test. And also, webmap tile service is a good solution for that, but to pass Inspire capacity threshold, we think is extremely difficult. We think it's a very stressing requirement. And perhaps it would be wise to define 2 levels of quality of services, especially in capacity. Services A and services B, because it's not the same the capacity needed to give a good service for a national reference data for a theme in Annex 1 than the capacity required to give a good service for a regional or local services for a theme in Annex 3 which has not a big demand. This is our opinion and our conclusion. Okay, and that's all. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Antonio. Some nice conclusions at the end to think about and for discussion later on. I have some questions on the conclusions you made on the operational capacity of the services.
Okay, thank you.
Well, so thank you very much.
Thank you.
Next up is Ine de Visser. She was, I think, the first time I will show the dashboard this week. I haven't seen it in any other session. But Geonovum in the Netherlands have been funding the new dashboard, Inspired Dashboard, which is available online, and you can actually see how the member state is doing on Inspire implementation. And you can also compare right now with the average performance of EU member states and EFTA countries. Well, you should pass by and have a look to see how you're doing. But Ine gonna show us, I think Christian already did a presentation this week on the dashboard. Am I right? Oh, okay, you have a booth, yeah. Okay. On the plenary. Please,
Thank you
Ine.
for the introduction. So I will present work done also by the EEA, Paul Hassenbar. He's not still there anymore, but he did also a lot of work here. And also together with Francois and Paul, who did the development of this. For anyone who is not that familiar with Inspire, every member state has to provide annually information on their Inspire implementation status, and that is what we call the Inspire monitoring. So we do it now, I think, a year or 6. We have done it, so we have results from the, 6 years. This is in most cases a burden, because from all data and service providers, each member state has to collect information on their status of implementation. And all this information has to be uploaded in a standard format. So it was a burden for the member states, but it was also a burden for the EEA, because the EEA themselves has also to combine all those results from the member states to one total result. So pain was by us, the member states, but also by the EEA, so that's why also the EEA wanted to change here something. The Netherlands is used, so we started under the working group on monitoring the MEWP 16, the development of the dashboard. So that was work done by the total of the working group. And as in the Netherlands, we started to use it. We first tested it, and in 2015, we also used it for our official monitoring. What is the dashboard? The dashboard makes use of all the metadata available in your discovery service. So we didn't to collect all the information needed for all those indicators, because most of it is already in the metadata and is calculated out of the metadata for the member states. And where the indicator information was not available in the metadata itself, it used automated monitoring of the validation of the metadata, because validation of the metadata itself, the conformity is not in the metadata itself, so we use there the validation. The dynamic dashboard, we have split it up in 2 different dashboards. At first we had only one dashboard, but last year we split it up, because we have the official dashboard. I think you know it. It's the one with all those European maps on it with different colors, how far you are with implementing Inspire. So that's the one to visualize the reported monitoring indicators. But in the dynamic dashboard, you are able to generate the monitoring and to visualize up-to-date monitoring indicators, because you can, every day you can monitoring if you want. So it's not a yearly thing you have to do. If you want to do it every week, every month, you can run the monitoring and see what's the status on that moment. And the dynamic dashboard also reports on the validity of metadata and services. So I don't have now a little bit complicated scheme of how it works. Here at first, at the upper left hand, is the input. That's your discovery service all member states have for Inspire. That's be harvested by the dynamic dashboard. The links in the metadata are checked. So is the link to your dataset or to your service working? On this moment, we use the TRC metadata validator to validate the metadata. All other indicators are generated out of the metadata, and together you can generate the reporting, monitoring reporting XML, which you can upload in EA web form. That's an existing tool. And you can add some elements which are not available in the metadata and also not can be created automatically. So that's the coverage of datasets, that's not inside the metadata, and the use of the services, that's also not in the metadata available. So you can add that information to the XML, and then you can do two things. Your reporting XML is then complete, and you can go to IONET, where every member state reporter has to upload the monitoring report. So, and then it goes through there to the official dashboard. Other thing you can do is also upload those results, the formal results, in the dynamic dashboard. And in the dynamic dashboard, you can also then see what is the evolution in time of all those indicators. So you have also statistics, not all those very nice maps, but sometimes it's much easier to have one diagram on one indicator for your own member state. And what's also possible, but is not part of official monitoring, so I want to be very clear of that, is that you can validate your service. And also other presents also said it's a help, it is not a punishment. Yeah, and also this official XML and reporting XML is published at the Inspire site. Also, already mentioned the metadata conformity is not part of the metadata cell, so that's why it's validated. But the calculation of the indicator is based on a threshold, because there were not commonly agreed rules for the metadata. So we have to agree at something, so we agreed on a threshold. If you are high enough, then because the conformance, what you have to report in the indicators only 0 or 1. So there is no other measurement in. So when it is not, when it's below the threshold, then it's 0. When you are above the threshold, then 1 is reported. Yeah, this year additional. In you'll have developed Inspire Source Validator, also mentioned by Clemens. And nice thing is that it's also the one which is will be used in further developments for the Inspire validation. So if the developments are far enough, we can replace the one we made with the updated version, also for used for everybody in Inspire. Yeah, benefits of the of this tooling is in the Netherlands. The Netherlands is not that big member state, but at coordination level, we saved at least 20 days a year. So that's only our benefits. Also, all data and service providers have benefits from it because they didn't have to fill in all those tables with information. Also, we have a quality improvement of the metadata because the metadata is used for this monitoring. So when you are validating, you are technically valid, but now when the metadata is used for the reporting, we want that the metadata was really good, also the content of it, because it was reported to the EEA and Commission. And it gives us also a clear and comparable picture of the validity of the metadata for all the stakeholders. And additional this year, we see also a comparable picture for the validity of the services from all the stakeholders. So, what do you see at the dashboard? You have some diagrams and tabular information on it. At first, people see the red circle, and they are a little bit confused and give strange reactions because what they feel is that they are punished, and they are also looking at the red circle and not much further. So that are their first feelings. When we go to the service validation, there you see more or less in the middle also a very big red circle. That's on the mandatory requirement. The orange is about the optional requirements. So if you show that at first to the service providers, to the data providers, they react like this. What the hell is happening here? When you look a little bit further, and they calm down a little bit, then you see most services are around 80% valid. So, and we have some of the services not that good, but most are 80%. But be aware, 80% means 80% of the rules checked. We did not have a weight on the rules, so every rule counts the same. So one rule can be, do you have available your keyword on the right place? And the right of that is the same as the rule, do you have stored queries? But it is a very big difference when you have not a keyword on the right place. You can use the data and download it. When you don't have your stored query, you're not able to download the whole dataset at once. So 80% is not 80%. So perhaps something has to change here, but not on this moment. So, and when you go further, you see more details. You can see on dataset level what are the results. And if you go a little bit further, you also can see the validation reports. So that is of help for the data and service providers because they can exactly see what you have to change to be valid. So also what is you can see there is that the results of a validation compared with the reported conformity of the service. And that's a big difference. So what we see now is that 80% service providers are reporting their service is conformant. What we measure with validation is that more or less 20% is valid. So there's a very big difference between that. So, Yuri, don't hear this. Most data providers and
Check
managers
tomorrow.
most data providers, the managers of them, are not aware of that. Because validation is a very technical thing. So they think their technical specialists do it very well, and technical specialists validate and say to the manager, yes, everything is well. And so the managers also think it's going well, but that's not the case. But the result of this is also the managers can see the dashboard. It gives them more information. Managers are mostly the one who see the red circles and not going below to all the details. So, but now also the managers are aware that something must be happen, and they are not yet there. So it gives also more. It helps the technical people inside an organization, because they get now a budget to do more. And eventually, with this, showing this, people are going to work and can improve their services. Now, other point of this is that the managers told us, okay, this dashboard is nice, but we really want to have a dashboard more for our purpose, to know, to see what the implementation status of our organization is. So we will start with that, but we do it together with the next working group on monitoring and reporting, so we can see what we can develop together. So eventually, the bulls are running because they now know they have to do something. If you want to do it yourself, it's available, it's running. The Inspire reporters of the member states have access to this, and if they, so you can ask them. And the only thing you have to do is hit a button to start the monitoring and to start the validation. But if you prefer not to share the indicators and the validation results with other member states of other organizations like we did, and not everybody likes it, I know. We have also an open source version. François developed it for this week. So it's now free, open, accessible, and you can install it on your own site. So it can be a help for you without sharing the results with everybody. Okay, thank you.
Thank you very much. I not only want to thank you for a great presentation, but also for all the efforts and the investments you made in developing the dashboard, because it just gave you some insight on the future reporting under Inspire. This is where we'll probably be reporting within 2 years. You know, you won't have to write reports anymore. There is a reporting obligation and a decision. That's why we have a sub-work group from the MIG that will discuss how we should address some legal obligations in the reporting decision to actually support a much more automated way of reporting and monitoring, that you have real-time information about the compliance of SDI structures. And we can also discuss, because she brings everything together. We had the presentation presented by Clemens on all the validation tools. Well, they're well integrated. And it's not only validating the conformity of the services and data, it's also about the quality of services, because then you can use Patineo things, whatever you want, and actually integrate all that information as part of this monitoring and reporting report that you will provide. So it's a very nice narrative, so it's a very nice session as well. You've got the different components coming together in a dashboard, which will actually help you report to the Commission. Not only report to the Commission, but also prove benefits of the existing infrastructure to your managers, to get the money you need to further invest in your infrastructures and to further build it and to further align it with digital actions and so on. So it's a great tool, and we will develop it further, I hope, the coming years. And I hope by 2017, 2018, we might have an operational new reporting process going on. Since most of the work has already been done, the work group should be very efficient. We should deliver as fast as possible. So thanks again. So now Dominique has arrived just in time. Thank you. So we'll give her the floor, and she will debrief us on the big meeting on validation organized before the summer. Please, Dominique.
Can you help me? I am a little lost without a mouse. It's the last one.
Okay.
Perfect. So, good morning, everyone. What I am going to report as a conclusion of a workshop about validation of InSpy technical components that took place in Paris in June of this year, that was co-organized by Eurogeographic, by the InSpy Ken that I am sharing, Ken State for Knowledge Exchange Network, by EuroSDR, and by the European Commission. So all the staff, all the presentations, the videos, the minutes are available on the public page of Eurogeographic. So if you have interest, you can just go to the Eurogeographic webpage, InSpy Knowledge, InSpy Exchange Knowledge, and you will find the staff. So first question is, why do we need validation? The first reason is to check if the technical requirements are met. It's simply to ensure that the infrastructure will work. So in this case, it's logical to have binary results. It passed or not. If it's not conform, it's not usable. So this kind of reports are mainly for implementers. However, we have to be aware that validation doesn't mean no issue at all, that the data will be easily usable. We know there will be still remaining issues, such as the lack of client application, or maybe sometimes some disappointing data, because most InSpy concepts are voidable. So maybe the user will get the data in the right structure, but not with the expected content. The other point is to measure the conformance to InSpy and to assess the progress that is done. So in this case, what is nice is to have indicators such as the percentage of success or some rate. It's for deciders to encourage to do better. For example, we have the Commission metadata validator. At the beginning, it was Boolean with hardly no one conform to an indicator, and when it came to indicator, there was some significant progress. I don't, probably you remind where you was a school child. If everyone has 0, you don't feel ashamed, and it's not encouraging you. And on the other hand, if you do progress and there is not the award through the note, it's not encouraging you neither. So we need this kind of indicators that show that there is progress, even if everything is not perfect. We have to be conform, but to be conform to what? In InSpy, there are several options. There is the implementing rule. There are the technical guidelines. Regarding the work in the working group 5 about validation, we understood that the choice was to check conformity against the technical guidelines, because it's really these technical guidelines that ensure true interoperability. And it's also something feasible because it's one possible implementation, and it might be too difficult to test all the potential implementation. But the workshop also shows that there was need to check conformity to other standards, to national profiles, to INSPIRE extensions, and so on. Who should do the validation? There are several options. Of course, there are the data producers, the data providers, to get confident in what they provide, to fill the conformity element in metadata. In metadata, you should report if you are conformant. So to do so, we have to do this validation. And it's also to have their metadata, data and services accepted by the geo-brokers, the integrators. At the moment, we have at least two examples. It's the European Commission with the metadata validation to have the metadata accepted by the INSPIRE geoportal. And we have also the ELF project. The data and services have to be checked, to be accepted by the ELF cascading services. Maybe there are other examples. I report about those that was shown during the workshop. So at the moment, it is what is done so far. But there might be other options. For instance, standardization body, the European Commission, and we know it's not yet the case, but it will be the case soon with the work going on in the Working Group 5 to develop these validation tools in agreement with the member state. It might be also OGC. OGC has validation for services to check against the OGC standards. Users might make validation, but during the workshop there was no example. So maybe it's not yet the case. I will say likely it's not yet the case. When should we do validation? Is there a specific month, week, or day, time in the day? Of course not, but there are rules nevertheless. So there were two advice: is make validation as soon as possible, integrate validation in the production process. Typically, it is done with the metadata editors. Generally, they have the rules within. It may be done also for data transformation. We had two examples with Snowflake and with Ale by integrating this web validation of e-environment plus project about schematron to include the rules and not only the target schema. And the other point is it's nice to make validation also at the end of the process. But in this case, your validation tools should be independent of the production ones. It's for final check, because you never know. How should we do validation? Which tools? So it may be automatically, so there are tools, but it may be also manually. Not everything can be done automatically. And it's not because something cannot be done automatically that it is not executable. So now we have a wide variety of tools. For instance, for metadata, we have the European validator, but we have also national validators. For data, we have tools addressing different points. For instance, XML validators to check the conformity to the schema. But there are other points in the data specification. There is not only the schema. For instance, there are schematron for other rules, CRS validator, and so on. For services, we have tools from OGC, OGC CITE, I don't really know how to pronounce it. We have the ETF from the ELF project. We have Spatineo for performance, and probably I am forgetting some of them. So at the moment, it's what is done so far, but with some drawbacks. For instance, when we have several tools checking the same thing, there is risk of duplication and inconsistencies. It's not an issue if the tools address different parts, but if they address the same part and do not give the same result, it may cause trouble for data producers. And of course, you are probably quite curious to know more about what is going on in Work Package 5. So, Carlo, please, can you go to help me?
I use the microphone. Just very quickly, especially for the people that here in Tuesday, when Michael in the Lutz and the MICT session shortly presenting the activity of the MICT. So one of the work subgroup of the MICT, Maintenance Implementation Group, Technical Maintenance Implementation Group set up at the end of 2013 is the validation and conformity test. This is one of the maximum priority for the MIC activity. The main principle for these groups is develop common agreement on the European validation for data, metadata, and network services, including, of course, performance quality testing. And the validation rules should be made explicit. So in some cases, the member states has to understanding what is valid and how validate the data, metadata, and so on. And another important thing is establish rules to have a change management process when we have a new technical guidelines and new ATS and ETS arrive, how to implementing this in a standard way. So in some cases, to have a progress implementation. And then we have also to discuss if we need or we have the possibility to set up a compliance certification to facilitate the process similar to OGC, but in the case of a SPY, we not certificate a software. In most cases, we certificate something that is more complex. In fact, also Dominique showed that sometimes some validation is not automatically, but it's more visual or intellectual validation. So the group is running for a long time, and now with the new programs change just a little bit the name, but not the contents, and probably finish the activity in 2017. What we have done and what we are in progress to do. So we have more or less set up all the ATS for metadata, discovery, view, and download service. We're not using the dataset because most of the data specification are inside the ATS, so we're using directly that. And we comment and we create a consultation with the MICT and member states people. We receive more than 350 comments on that ATS, mainly on, most of them are on the metadata, but anyway, we receive some for each elements. And from the consolidated ATS, we decide to implementing inside the arena as an action, more or less the work that Clemens showed in this week during the conference, to implementing the ETS in a simple way to have a validation for each of these elements. So, but we have also, in some case, set up a catalog. So we have a catalog of existing validation solution that we have in place in most of the member states, but also in private companies. So you can find also a catalog of these tools, and of course we try to push to using also reusing these tools in the ETS implementation to not lose effort that we have using in the last year. So more or less, this is very shortly what we have done and what we are in progress to do.
Thanks. So, going on, what were the main difficulties to perform validation? Some tools are not mature enough. We are lacking of knowledge. In a way, we are pioneers in validating such a big SDI as INSPY. For instance, there is an assessment from the health project, and what was really an issue was the validation of download services. That was considered as headache. The main difficulties, it's also about the analysis of errors. It takes time to analyze a new type of errors, and I think really the main issue that was mentioned during the workshop was we cannot understand the error message. Only the geek can understand them, and even the geeks that were in the room sometimes say, no, we cannot. So it's really difficult. However, once the issues are identified, sometimes they are rather easy to be corrected. We had also some difficulties mentioned about different options to interpret the technical guidelines, to ensure conformity over time, because there may be changes. We have the example with the metadata. The European Commission has tried to put a good policy for the metadata validator, saying we are going to release only every 6 months with lots of warnings and things like this. But on the other hand, the editor is not in line, is not with the same version. It's also difficult to assess what is reasonable level of conformity. I think it's what you said, 80% maybe doesn't always mean the same thing. There are requirements that are more important than others. There were also need for cross-component validation. Maybe checking each component by itself, it doesn't ensure that the whole structure will work nicely. There were also issues with protected services that could not be reached by some of the tools. So, what might be improved? There is this slide from the research point of view. I'm not going to detail everything, but from the research point of view, the 2 main points were about this executable test suite and the service validation. That probably are the 2 main points to be improved. Some of the potential improvements from data providers, most of the errors are just coming from broken links. And generally, these links are in metadata to ensure the link between data and services. And if something changes, we have to change also the link in the metadata. So keep our data updated is also a good way to improve the conformity. From the software providers, we need more user-friendly tools. There was an example given, I think it was in Germany, with domain experts writing the error message. So they can be understood by normal users and not just by geeks and nerds. Of course, we probably have also to move from formal compliance to data usability and maybe to have more things to be done to check if the data is really suitable for users. And we have also to exchange our knowledge, because I think all of us have limited knowledge, but putting all this knowledge together, our knowledge will get greater. So everything that can encourage this knowledge exchange, such as today's workshop, but maybe in the future have frequently asked questions, frequent errors, and how to solve them, these kind of things. So now I think a nice transition for the lunchtime about this attractive pineapple, though it may look not so valid. Thanks.
Thank you very much, Dominique, for this very good, concise, and very pragmatic overview of the results and the outcome of the workshop we had before summer. So very helpful. So I rather want to give the floor to the audience and ask questions on all these presentations. There should be some questions, I think. We saw some very interesting things. I know it's close to lunch, but please, go ahead. Any questions? No questions. Very good. I do have a lot of questions. No, it's, in general, I've got the impression that we're talking about different things. I've seen people talking about conformity. I see people talking about compliance. Some people are mentioning punishment of people implementing Inspire. What is it all about? Now, from a legal point of view, we are policy officers, we're not technical people. So we look at the policy as being the legal act. When we talk about compliance, we check the legal act. And we check what's in the legal act, and then we see if a member state provides that implementation. Now, Inspire is a very different animal. So Inspire's most benefit comes out the interoperability. So that's also part of the technical implementation. So Inspire has become a very technical community in the end for the implementation. Now, I want to reassure you, when we talk about validation, that's a question for Clemens as well. There are several things going on. For us, it would be very nice to have a validator that also checks the legal compliance and not the technical conformity. And then you need our help, and we have to be very clear to you what we expect from member states to implement on technical level. Means Inspire says provide access, share your data, provide access, make your metadata, provide access through services. That's about it on the legal side. So, and then we have to search how we can actually check it on a higher level. So,
well, it's I think it's in order to test something, you need to
rules.
You need to have some specific implementation options that you can test against. I think it's what we try to do. Also, if you look at the abstract test suites, there is a separation between, let's say, the general requirement, which is basically implementation independent, but then the test really needs to make a technical selection, right, in order to test it. I think it's the only thing that you can really test is the technical specifications, which are, of course, I mean, the requirements, for example, in the data specifications, they reference the implementing rules. Yeah. But basically, in order to test it, you have to know the encoding, because otherwise you can't write something that you can automate. It would always be a review. And of course, that's not what you want with a dashboard, etc. So I think there are limits. So I think what we have to do, test in an ETS, essentially, is always the technical guidance, right? Mm-hmm. I think it's important that there is a link between the technical guidance and the implementing rule. That needs to be clear and straight. Yeah. And also there can be a distinction whether something is, and the technical guidance does that, whether there's a requirement that implements, that's a technical guidance requirement, or something that really is a legal requirement, mm-hmm. right? So, and we have different conformance classes, and you can use that kind of thing to actually make that difference, but the test always has to go against the technical implementation.
I'm going to be very clear on this one. So the main requirement would be member states have to provide access to their data through a service that provides view and download capacity. Now, that can be an OGC service, of course, and that's what you're testing as part of good practice, technical guidance. Could be any kind of service. So that's why people have been mentioning we've got e-government services and we've got Inspire services. Inspire services being the OGC implementations and eGov being the RESTful implementation. Now, the directive itself, nor the implementing regulation, actually prevents you implementing a RESTful service as an Inspire service. So it's a good thing that we have agreed, because we all agreed on the technical direction and the technical guidance with all member states in the expert group. So this is the way we want to implement it the coming years. Technology evolves, so there are other options. So there might be a member state taking initiative next month saying, I will write a technical guidance on how to implement it through a RESTful interface. OGC will provide a RESTful interface as well, so that's an option and should be tested as well in the validator. So I hope it's extensible, but meaning on legal level, we can't just discriminate. If a member state says, I've got an Inspire service, we have to be able to check whether his implementation also actually complies to the legislation, and not just to the technical good implementation options that we provide. So.
Yeah, no doubt about that. I mean, it's of course, if there are additional implementation options coming up, right, and agreed, I mean, you can't just test something if you have a URI and let's say you have to deliver view and download services, you need to know what is a view and download service. So you need to spend the time to actually document why this implementation option meets the legal requirements, and then you can implement the test. And that will, of course, be work in progress because things will evolve. That's quite clearly the case.
Just the last question. I hear you talking about, at the very end, support for linked features or links to features in the ATS and ETS. I heard Dominique also talk about support for national extensions. Are we talking about the same thing? So
that's different things, really. Yeah. But one thing is national extensions is when you add to the specifications. Yeah. So, for example, you want to have additional features or additional attributes, or maybe also for services you come up with additional profiles or metadata. So that's national extensions. When I was talking about the links between features, we do have, as part of the data, it's not very often used, but you can have associations between features. Also across data sets. That's really when we talk about linking data. I think we don't have much of that, and if potentially in the future more might be interesting there. But right now it's also in SDIs, it's not very standardized practice on how you actually do that, so that you can make use of the links. That's there is more work that needs to be done, and I think also in the technical guidance.
I'm very happy with this interpretation of link, because you know that within the concept of e-reporting, within the Commission as well, and the existing reporting, so there will be a change of reporting. We're trying to modernize it and use Inspire as the main process for reporting information in the future to the Commission. So part of it is about linking data. It's about setting up a core model based on Inspire, then linking to a lot of domain-specific air quality, flooding information that's linked to that Inspire data. So that would be support for, well, kind of schemas that extend Inspire by just referring to other domain-specific schemas. Yeah, great, thank you. So I don't know if in the meantime people have reflected on the other sessions and have extra questions, or you're just hungry and you're hungry and want to go for food. Okay, no more questions. So I want to thank everybody, and certainly all the presenters for these great presentations this morning. So thank you.